Good morning. I'm Mayor Dean Brookie, and welcome to the special meeting of Durango City Council. This is a virtual meeting held on November 23rd, 2020. It's now 10:34 a.m. I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Councilor Bachin?
Here.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Present.
Councilor Youssef?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Present.
And Mayor Brookie?
Here. Thank you very much. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss an emergency ordinance of the City of Durango supporting the enforcement of the mask ordinance. But prior to that, item 2 on our agenda is public participation. So we'd like to hear from anybody that would like to participate in this public meeting. We have ability to enter the meeting via Zoom, in which case you push the raise hand button, and our monitors will allow you into the meeting, invite you into the meeting, and we're anxious to hear what you have to say in over a 3-minute period. As you enter the meeting, you will be made public. You will be seen on live TV and or in our streaming. And if you are calling in, you can do so by phone. And then once you are in, push the *9 button, and you will be unmuted, and we'll be able to hear you. With that, do we have any public participants waiting in the attendee list?
We do. We have Debbie requesting to speak.
Excellent.
Debbie, I've invited you to speak. Please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. This is Sweetie Marbury, and I live at 2256 West 2nd Avenue. I've reread the proposed ordinance several times, and I certainly agree that it should be within the city limits, and that is a very positive note. But I found it unclear about the language of using a mask inside the store. I enter and I exit with a mask, but where does it say all customers should wear a mask? I also wanted to comment about the penalties. The fine for inappropriate use of a bear-proof container begins at $100. And so I would like to see the penalties increased. For example, I'd like to see a language that supports using a business and a liquor license to be temporarily suspended, because I believe that is a true enforcement of using the mask order. I appreciate City Council meeting this morning. I know that you were criticized last week for not having a proposal. This is a much better proposal, but I still think there's some missing language. What happens inside the store if I take off my mask? Whose responsibility is that to enforce it? I'm hoping it's an employee or the business owner or the manager. And I certainly believe that the penalties should be upgraded to a temporary suspension of a business license. No lightweight fines. I don't think that's going to be enough of an incentive to encourage the business places to help us with our economy and our public health. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sweetie Marbury, and good comments. Do you have any other folks waiting in the wings?
We have Frank. Frank, I've invited you to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Do you hear me? My name is Frank Lockwood. Apparently my video is not on, but I guess that's okay. I live at 122 Rockridge Drive, Durango, Colorado. The current emergency ordinance up for today is a fabulous, an excellent improvement over the version that was presented last week, in that it does cover the entire city of Durango rather than a narrow area. So I think that that makes it a lot more common sense. The only area that I see that I think needs improvement would be paragraph 3 on page 4. That's under section 2 mask requirement, but on page 4, the duties of owners, operators, and managers of the business. I think what needs to be added there is on the second line after the word employees, that the words and customers be inserted so that it reads, the owner, operator, or manager of any business shall have an obligation to assure that all employees and customers of that business comply with the provisions of this emergency ordinance. And at the end of that same paragraph, after the phrase compliance by employees, also insert and customers of the business as required herein. In addition, at the end of that paragraph, I believe it should be inserted the following language. For any customer who refuses to wear a mask, the owner, operator, or manager is required to refuse service and entry to said customer, and further required to ask said customer to leave the premises. If that's done, then if that language is inserted, it fills a gigantic loophole which exists today, and that is for customers who simply do not comply with the sign or an owner's request, they simply are able to, without any problem, allowed to roam around in a business to the detriment of the rest of us who follow the ordinance. It also ties in with section 4 trespass. That section says, refers to any customer who refuses to leave the premises at the request of an owner. But nowhere in the ordinance does it require the owner to make that request. So I filled in that loophole with the language that I have proposed. Thank you.
Okay, it looks,
You're on mute.
Okay. Tamara, do we have any others in our wings? Thank you, Frank, for those thoughts.
we do. We have a person with the phone number ending in 0168. You're invited to speak. Please unmute, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
You might remind them how to unmute.
Try *6 to unmute.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can barely hear you, but we can hear you. Thanks so much for being here.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, absolutely.
Kristen Smith at 2111 County Road 301. This is my comment. Grocery shopping for weekly family needs for the past 9 months has been a strange and unsettling experience for all of us. Many of us are anxious about our health. Thankfully, the 2 million deaths projected at the beginning of the outbreak have only resulted in a little over 200,000 deaths that came to the United States. Individuals like me who are unable to wear a mask in public grocery stores have a particularly difficult time carrying out weekly grocery shopping needs. We've been routinely harassed by overly vigorous store employees who, at no fault of their own, are ignorant. The people who cannot wear masks have medical exemptions of all kinds. Many of us have undiagnosed medical conditions which prevent mask wearing, and many of us are unable to see a doctor to obtain a supporting document of medical exemption for a variety of reasons. However, these medical exemptions exist and are not the business of any store employee, public official, or public employee. No one is entitled to my or anyone's private medical information, regardless of any CDC guideline or city ordinance. Individuals who cannot wear masks have been violated on a daily basis for the last 9 months. We are done, and we will no longer be harassed. The law is on our side. We are not trespassing on anyone's property when we come to grocery shop without a mask. We are carrying about our business as protected legally and constitutionally. We are happy that Durango is passing this ordinance as it contains specific language which exempts those who cannot medically tolerate a mask. This language is redundant, but very important as it supports the protection of all stakeholders. It is important for medically exempt individuals to be able to shop to provide for their families. We hope this specific language means an end to our medical discrimination and harassment. We ask the city, county, and health department to iterate to establishments which are in the business of accommodating the public that their employees may not approach and ask maskless shoppers for personal and private medical information or documentation, and that these establishments may not medically us from their stores. Similarly, they may not ask for private health information, such as what type of condition might forbid me from wearing a mask. My health status is not a chip to bargain with for access to shops which are open to the public. Do not approach individuals for personal, private. Anyone who has done this or does this in the future will be held legally accountable. We are done being harassed. We will call the police if we are approached, harassed, shouted at, prompted for personal medical information, or blocked from entering a store or paying for groceries simply because we cannot wear a mask. If we are refused entry or denied paying for our groceries, we will call the police to file a claim for false imprisonment. We are legally protected. We are not breaking the law.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Appreciate that, and appreciate your endorsement of the mask ordinance, and hope that we have creative parameters under which, or we are in a process of creating parameters under which you can shop effectively. Next caller, Tamara.
And I'm not sure
We have,
comments back and forth between the callers, and I think this is public comment for us to listen to.
I was listening. Thanks you.
we have Bernadette. You are invited to speak. Please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Great. Can you hear me? Hello?
Bernadette, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I appreciate you guys having public comment on this. And I think the backbone behind all of what's happening in Durango and, of course, across the world is the testing. And that is my biggest question. I confirmed that San Juan Basin Health is using ATC Lab, and they use what's called reverse transcription PCR, polymerase chain reaction. These are remarkably unreliable with high false positive results. They are not designed to be a diagnostic tool, as they cannot distinguish between an inactive virus or a live reproductive virus, to the extent that Dr. Mark Yeadon, the former vice president and scientific doctor of Pfizer, has gone on the record stating false positive results from unreliable PCR tests are being used to manufacture a second wave based on new cases. Even the inventor of PCR testing, Carrie Mullins, repeatedly stressed that this test should not be used as a diagnostic tool because it is incapable of diagnosing disease. A positive test does not actually mean that you have an active infection present. And this is from the CDC preventative publication on coronavirus and PCR tested dated July 13th, 2020. The test cannot rule out diseases as either being bacterial or viral pathogens. The PCR test collects RNA from the nasal cavity, and then it's reverse transcribed into DNA. However, in order to see the small, very genetic snippets, it has to be amplified. My question is, how many times does San Juan Basin Health amplify the PCR test? Amplification over 35 cycles is considered unreliable and scientifically unjustified. Yet the test recommended by the World Health Organization and Drosten test amplifies 45 cycles. According to the New York Times, CDC own calculation shows it's extremely unlikely to detect a live virus in samples that have gone through more than 33 cycles. The Wadsworth Center, a New York State laboratory at the New York Times request, changed the threshold from 40 to 35 cycles, thus eliminated 43% of the positive tests. Limiting to 30% amplification, or cycles, eliminated a whopping 63% of the positive results. The test amplifies insignificant sequences of viral DNA. Even if the virus is inactive, it will show positive due to the excessive cycle thresholds. Therefore, PCR testing cannot detect an infection, cannot distinguish between inactive virus or live reproductive ones, cannot tell you if you're currently ill or if you're contagious, and the test can only picks up dead debris that poses no threat. I think I'm at my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernadette, and thank you for wrapping up succinctly. I appreciate it. And next caller, please. The mystery caller.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. We have Victoria. Victoria, you are invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Victoria Schmidt. I am at 1001 East 5th Avenue in the city of Durango. And first of all, for a setting of the discussion that's here today, we are talking about a virus that has affected the world. And what we have found in the United States is that the most vulnerable population, that being people who are 80 years or older, who have other conditions such as diabetes or heart disease, they have an 87% chance of survival. The absolute most vulnerable population. Most 80-year-olds who do not have, or I should say 80-year-olds who do not have underlying conditions, have a 97% chance of survival. Overall in the population, there's a 99.7% chance of survival of this virus. Here in La Plata County, we've had around 1,000 cases, 3 deaths, 2 of which were clearly not from COVID, but ended up getting classified as with COVID, a play on terms, which is frequently being done throughout this pandemic. So we've had possibly 1 death out of nearly 1,000 cases in the county. And we're calling this a pandemic that closes business, keeps children out of school, keeps the suicide rate increasing. This is unexplainable, and it's unexplainable why the news media is not covering these issues. Why has our news media stopped being investigative? What is going on in our society right now? Our hospital mainly has people from other states, not local COVID patients. And now what we're faced with is we have a state who put on a mask mandate. They decided they couldn't enforce it. So they said, okay, let's go to trespassing. We'll enforce trespassing. There's a problem with that too, because there's a public accommodation that is allowed for under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So you really can't enforce trespassing either. So now you're going to go another step, try to fill another gap, requiring businesses to enforce a law that you and that the state are putting out there. Since when does it become a business's responsibility to enforce a state mandate? The tickets, the idea of providing tickets, it's a show. If you provide, basically all you're doing is doing a lot of stopgap measures to make people happy and make people who are complaining feel more comfortable. In fact, I just would like to ask you to ask yourselves, if this is a legitimate action that is being taken, why have so many stopgaps had to be filled in? If this is a legitimate action, why is there a need to stretch and manipulate the law? Why is there a need to rely on citizen enforcement? There is a Constitution. There is a Civil Rights Act of 1964 that allows people equal access. If you require businesses to enforce this, and as one speaker requested to ask businesses to enforce trespassing, you are asking businesses to take on the liability of a case against them for not allowing equal accommodation. I just can't even believe that I'm watching you people who I know and value as community members implement this kind of a thing when we've had 1,000 cases with rampant testing, like signs flashing on Main Avenue asking for people to be tested. We end up with 1,000 cases. Most of those people don't feel sick. They're basically healthy. 1 death in all of the county, 99.7% survival rate. Please stop and ask yourselves, what is going on here?
Thank you, Victoria. Next caller, please.
We have Shelley. Shelley, you're invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Shelley Rudder. I'm at 101 Red Rooster Road, Durango, Colorado. I'm an ICU and ER traveling nurse since 2015. I just find it incredibly dangerous. This is a dangerous precedent to set that public health officials and elected officials are coming between health decisions made by patients, by a single individual and their healthcare provider. That is not your place. Masking is dangerous, and there is evidence to support that. A recent study of 6,000 people showed no minimal to no protective effect of wearing a mask, but we are seeing increased amounts of staph infections, increased lung infections, skin infections from wearing this mask around your face all day. They are not washed appropriately. They are not being discarded appropriately. And don't we love our beautiful Colorado? All I do is walk around on trails within the city limits, outside of city limits, and I see these discarded, ugly, nasty masks that are ruining our state. So it's not just a health issue. It's also an issue of littering. I mean, we don't agree with that here in Colorado. We love to keep our state beautiful. And you know what? As a healthcare provider, I like to keep health and medicine within the walls of the hospital. So why are we not hearing from doctors and experts that have any differing opinion that masking is a good thing? Because there are lots of people out there that agree that masking is dangerous. If you want a healthy immune system, go outside, get sunshine, support your immune system with healthy local food. What we are doing is taking a stance that is dangerous, and it's only leading to more dangerous things down the road, such as pushing a vaccine that has been rushed and has no long-term safety trials to support it. So what you need to do is stop. You need to back up. What you need to do is educate the public. That is what you're called to do, educate the public, and let the public make their own personal health decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Reddy. Next caller, please.
We have Monica. Monica, you're invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can, Monica. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Monica Benedetto. My address is 54 Shortville Place, Durango, Colorado, 81303. And I echo a lot of what Victoria and Shelley and Kristen are saying. I don't believe that it's the business's place to enforce such rules. And I do believe that it's creating separation. I believe that it's discriminating against people who are not able to go into stores to purchase their own food. There are teams of people looking to purchase food elsewhere because we don't know where to go anymore. And it's causing a lot of civil unrest. I'm afraid that if we keep pushing the boundaries of the citizens and the enforcement, then we might see, I don't know. I don't feel like it's helping support us coming together in this time of really needing each other. And I do not feel that a mask is the answer or hand sanitizer is the answer. Can we talk about eating well, getting out and getting sun? Like a mask in the way that people are touching their faces and continuing to touch everything that they're coming into contact with is not safe. And I'm afraid that it's going to lead to more sickness and more illness and, again, more separation. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate it. And next caller.
We have Kelly. Kelly, you've been invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We sure can, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kelly Fuenzalita. I'm actually currently a resident in Mancos, but I lived in Durango for 10 years, and I continue to be a patron of several businesses, spending over $200 weekly for groceries. I want to stress that the re-inhalation of our exhaled air will without a doubt create oxygen deficiency and a flooding of carbon dioxide. We know that the human brain is very sensitive to oxygen deprivation. There are nerve cells, for example, in the hippocampus that can't be longer than 3 minutes without oxygen. They cannot survive. The acute warning symptoms are headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, issues in concentration, slowing down of reaction time, reactions of the cognitive system. However, when you have chronic oxygen deprivation, all those symptoms disappear because you get used to it. But your efficiency will remain impaired and the undersupply of oxygen in your brain continues to progress. We know that the neurodegenerative diseases take years to decades to develop. If today you forgot your phone number, the breakdown in your brain would have already started 20 to 30 years ago. I think I'd like to echo the sentiments of the previous callers, that this is not the local government's place, and to be putting this onto the store owners, because the store owners, after all, are not the police. They are not constitutional attorneys. They do not, it's not their place to enforce these laws that you are handing out and putting the liability onto them. They are not familiar with medical exemptions, and they're enforcing stuff that they don't have the right to. I moved to Durango, and it seemed that most people there valued the environment and health. This is not the government's place. Are your mandates making a difference in terms of limiting the spread of COVID? Because that didn't happen with the first lockdown. It didn't happen with the quarantine and the limiting of businesses. The community can only be as strong as the individuals that make it up. And if we are limiting the health and mobility of the individuals, aren't we affecting the entire community as a whole? This is wrong. I think that your job is to educate, like Shelley said, not to manipulate and to scare the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments for this morning for public participation?
Yes, we have Jenny. Jenny, you've been invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jenny Diehl. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jenny, we sure can.
Hi, this is Jenny Diehl. My address is 27846 Highway 550 in Durango. Well, I am a person who has never worn a mask. So I guess according to everyone out there, I should be dead. But in fact, I've never been sick this last 9 months either. I have a question for the City Council. How can a person be forced by any business or government entity to wear a mask, which negatively affects the respiratory system, without having a physical exam by a licensed doctor who approves such an action? I echo the previous callers, Kelly, Victoria, Shelley, Kristen, and Monica, that this is very detrimental to our health. My family and I moved to Durango about 3 years ago. We wanted to move to a community that was health-minded, a community that was a beautiful place to live, which is why so many of us live here. The mountains, the clear air. And it was so attractive to us to want to move to a community where people valued their health. But as things happened back in February and March, I was really disappointed in the way that this community has handled this so-called pandemic. I believe that our immune systems are what keep us healthy. Not a mask, not hand sanitizer, not gloves. Those are actually what make us sick. And you know, everybody's into the science. So let me tell you something about what the science says. Healthy people should not wear masks or be quarantined. Masks reduce the intake of oxygen, leading to carbon dioxide toxicity. Germs are trapped near your mouth and nose, increasing the risk of infection. Wearing a mask causes you to touch your face more frequently. There is no scientific evidence that supports healthy people wearing masks. And that's what the majority of people are. As Victoria said, 99.7% of us are surviving this. Masks obscure your facial features and impede normal social interaction. Masks make it hard for hearing impaired people to understand you. Masks are a symbolization suppressing.
Can I ask you to wrap it up here very quickly? Your time is up. Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. Lastly, masks do not prevent the spread of this virus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Tamara, more folks in our queue.
We have Amber. Amber, you've been invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Amber Andrew. I live at 33405 Highway 550. I am just calling to agree with the people who just spoke and state my adamant disagreement with this mandate and its enforcement. I have lived in Durango my entire life and have been very disappointed to see the city council and regulating health organizations think that they even have the authority to make a mandate like this and enforce it in this way. I have close friends and family that are business owners, law enforcement, mothers with students, and all of these people have been irreversibly impacted by this mandate and others in the city. And so I just am calling to say that I disagree. And I hope that you're listening to these comments and will act accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber, and appreciate your comments. And next caller, please.
We have Philip. Philip, you're invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can, Philip. You bet.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone who's been on this call, speaking and talking. You guys have done more research, focused on more information, and been more quote unquote scientific than what our city council has presented to us, which has been very, very little. I see inside of the mandate that they reference nothing for any of the scientific studies. It's just a general statement. And we've had people show up on this call who have been ready with real facts, real information, and I just want to applaud you guys. In reality, we recognize that these public comments aren't going to change our city council's mind. They have drafted this stuff. They've pushed forward on this stuff. They clearly have a design to want to control and command and tell people how they're going to live their lives. I know there's been arguments about why they would use businesses. That's because they realize that in truth, they really can't at a government level enforce this. So they have to use cultural peer pressure and the fear of our businesses losing their licenses, losing their livelihoods to enforce what they want to enforce. It's a shame and it's sad, but I just want to encourage everyone here who's listening and commenting and willing to put their names and information out there to say, keep fighting, keep focusing on that stuff. Don't be afraid. Don't let these people cow you down into not having people in your homes, forcing you to have a couple family members. And as sad as it is, just remember that anyone who's willing to narc on you, who wants to complain about you or call you out in a store or say that you're killing people, recognize that you do have the high ground. You're informed, you aren't ignorant, you've been working hard, and we will eventually overcome all the silliness that's going on here. So I just want to be a word of encouragement for everyone out there listening. And anyone who's on the fence, please take the time to find the resources that these people on the line are talking about and saying, don't be a needless sheep being led to the slaughter. Be a leader, be a guide, and be informed. Thank you for your time, folks.
Next caller.
We have Garth. Garth, you're invited to speak. Please unmute yourself. State your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Garth Schulteis, and I guess the video's not working. That's an old picture. I'm at 32 Tierra Verde Drive, Durango, Colorado, 81301. And I just want to state that I'm against this mask ordinance and the mandate. And I just think it's a complete overreach of the local government and the state government. It's draconian. And I don't see that we are being represented, that we, the people, are being represented. There's 3 branches of the government. That's judicial, executive, and legislative. And if you've noticed, our governor has been making executive orders out the wazoo with no regard to public comment or anything like that. And then the judicial branch is working hand in hand with whatever the governor says, which leaves the legislative branch completely ineffective, which, to my understanding, that's the only branch of the government that we, the people, can vote on on the current laws. But those, it's basically leading to lawlessness because the government's just doing what they want, closing down businesses. They want to enforce more financial hardship on people. And then, besides the moratorium that we are experiencing on evictions, which that affects property owners. So I just wanted to state that I'm against it, and I'm disappointed in our local government. Thank you.
Next caller.
We have a caller with the number ending in 0684. You're allowed to talk now. Please state your name and address for the record. Don't forget to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Stacy Gonzalez, and I'm at 2845 County Road 234, Durango 81301. Can you hear me?
Sure can, Stacy, you bet.
Okay, I agree with everyone's sentiments here. I'm a nurse. I have taken off the last 2 years to take care of my children because they are our future, and I would never do anything to endanger my children. Since March, I have been researching and researching and researching. Masks are not effective. They create more harm than good. I have a stack of evidence-based material I would be more than happy to share with you. I know how to read it. I know how to understand it. And it agrees with everyone's sentiment on here today, except for the first 2 callers. Please stop your overreach. You are not doctors, and you're trying to enforce a law and put business owners as responsible for my health. They are not allowed to ask my health issues. It is a HIPAA violation. I know HIPAA violation. They are not allowed to ask. Also, they do not have doctors employed in their business to make sure that I am safe. If they want to take that responsibility, they can be sued. But I also didn't employ them for that responsibility. If I asked them to watch over me, that would be one thing, but I'm not. I am taking the responsibility for my health to walk into a store and buy food. A mask is a medical device. They have no right to oversee it. I really hope you guys stop your overreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Next caller, please.
We have Michelle. Michelle, you're now invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Michelle Whiting. I live in Durango, Colorado. Anthony Fauci, supposed medical expert, has gone back and forth on wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And if masks supposedly work, why are you guys closing down the schools and restaurants and churches in our little community? I have friends in Dallas, Texas, and their schools aren't closed yet. Dallas is a lot bigger community than here. Have you thought about the detrimental effect closing down these schools, what it does to the children? They can't go to school, interact with other kids, teachers, get out of their households for a while. There's increased abuse. Some of these kids don't have food at home, so they get food at the school.
Thank you, Ms. Whiting. And for the record, City does not control the schools.
That was not 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't hear you. We thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No. Back to, I'm talking about schools closing and restaurants closing, but then you can keep liquor stores open and pot shops open. But if masks work, why are you closing these? If I want to go to a restaurant, I should be able to. The trickle-down effect, you close the restaurants, then the supply chain and people losing jobs and the parents can't stay home with their kids because the kids are at home. This whole thing is horrendous.
Ms. Whiting, are you done? Are you complete with your statement?
Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and sorry to interrupt you. Tamara, next caller, please.
We have Madeline. Madeline, you've been invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We sure can, Madeline. You bet.
My name's Madeline McCarty. I live up at Bicedo Lake, and I'm a frequent, I drive down to Durango every day. During the course of all of this, I have chosen to not wear the mask for majority of my outings. Over the course of time, I have noticed that people have gotten angry, they've been attacking, they've been shouting, screaming. I feel the same way as everybody else who has spoken this morning. I am so happy to hear that my community feels the same way that I do, and I do not back this mandate at all. It is not the place of the restaurants or businesses to be doing any of this, and actually a lot of them do not want to be wearing the mask or enforcing these rules. It's bullying of our businesses, bullying of our community, our citizens, and like everybody else has said, there's a lot of scientific explanation backing why the masks do not work. This is taking away personal rights, personal freedoms. I can't imagine growing up in this era. I can't imagine living in it. And the fact that we are right now, it's disastrous. It's horrific. I hope that everybody in the community can band together. And if you feel the need to not wear the mask, you do not wear the mask. Everybody has their own voice. Everybody has an opinion, and it deserves to be heard. Thank you so much to everybody who's spoken today and taken the time to put out what really needs to be said. That is the end of my statement.
Thank you, Madeline. Next caller.
We have Harrison. Harrison, you've been invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please state. We can.
My name is Harrison Corella. I live in Hermosa. All I wanted to say is that instead of threatening to fine people for not wearing masks, why don't you guys do something meaningful, like come up with something to help the people who are actually vulnerable? And what you guys are doing is dividing the people in Durango and taking a really one-sided approach to a very complex issue. You guys need to get creative, get our community involved. There are boatloads of amazing people in our community who are very glad to help out. And there's definitely a better way for you guys to step up. So I just want you guys to do your job and listen to the people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Harrison. And next caller, please.
We have Kelly. Kelly, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Kelly, are you there? We can't quite hear you, Kelly. Tamara, we may have to get back with Kelly if you can dial in. Kelly, if you can unmute yourself, try *6. Okay, let's
Mayor,
move on.
we had a Kelly. Yeah, we had a Kelly earlier. It may be the same person. We'll go ahead and skip ahead to Lynn. Lynn, you're invited to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lynn Kitch. Can you hear me?
Sure can, Lynn. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning still, I guess. I live at 1145 East 4th Avenue in Durango, Colorado, and I would like to speak as a business owner in town. I guess one of my concerns is early on in March, when this originally started, and we had a mask mandate, our place of business, I own Home Slice Pizza with my husband, Corey, was the south location. The police came, they gave us a warning about our employees not wearing masks correctly. And unfortunately, we were not allowed to, we were not given the date and the time of the incident so that two things could happen. One is I could review my cameras for training purposes for my staff, so that if that did indeed happen, that I could just remind them how to wear their mask. So it was an educational opportunity missed. And two, that I could show that maybe we were wearing our masks correctly at that date and time of the incident. And we were not given that information. So my concern moving forward, and I know this is a really heated, emotional time with the mask issue. I don't even want to get into that really. But as a business owner, I just want to make sure that if we're going to have this mandate and we're going to have the potential for fines, that we are given the opportunity to see the date and the time or provided that information so that we can look at our cameras or review with our staff, and we can use it as an educational opportunity. And we can also maybe even prove that our staff was wearing masks correctly.
Very good, Lynn. Good point. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good luck.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Next caller, Tamara.
We have Roy. Roy, I've invited you to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I think Roy disappeared.
Roy, are you with us? You might push *6 to unmute yourself. If not, we'll move on and hopefully get you back in.
Mayor, can I just say something just so I don't want to forget?
Sure, Melissa, you
we
bet.
do have some comments I believe you're going to read into the record today as well.
I believe that's correct. Are you referring to San Juan Basin Health Department?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I just didn't want to forget. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
I don't know who has those. I have a copy of those, but how we actually read those in is, we'll talk about that in a moment. So we lost Roy. Do we have another caller?
We do. We have a number ending in 8191. I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes. Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me?
We sure can. State your name.
Okay,
and,
thank you. Sorry.
State your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Lindsay McElroy. I live at 170 Meadow Road, Durango, Colorado, 81303. I would also like to thank the many people who have spoken up on behalf of those who are too scared to speak up in this state of a fear-driven society now. We are not to have a spirit of fear, and that is exactly what the media, our cities, our governors are all feeding right now. We are supposed to have a spirit of power and of love and of sound mind, and that has been muted by everybody in this whole society right now, and it is detrimental. Science has shown that masks do not work right now. In fact, CEO Dr. Richard Hodgkinson of a biotech company has said positive test results do not mean a clinical infection. It's simply driving public hysteria. Our San Juan Basin Health came out in March and said that if we do not lock down, we will have tens of thousands of deaths in our area alone. No one has ever called them out on that air of driving fear. We all were cautious at the beginning, but right now we are showing that people are healthy and that they can be out there, because if this was truly deadly, masks would not be lining the streets or in standard trash cans. They'd be in hazardous waste containers. Masks or people would be dying at Walmart who are working there because they're essential, but they're in harm's way right now, but they're actually still alive, and they've been alive for 8 months. This is a fear-driven, freedom-sucking situation right now, and people have got to fight back. The city council is here to protect our city, okay? Small businesses right now are suffering, and it is so sad that they have given their life and their funds, their savings, their passions to this city who is not backing them anymore. I am so sick of watching our local businesses shut down, and yet we're feeding Walmart and all of these mass corporations and Amazon. I don't want to shop at Amazon. I don't want to help fund them, but I will if you continue to instate all of these horrible mask mandates. I have never worn a mask into this facility. My children will not wear masks. My toddler will not grow up watching people wear masks. If they worked, we'd have more than cotton on our face. And if people want to wear them for their own security, good. That's fine. That is their freedom to wear. And since when in history have we quarantined the healthy people and not just the sick people? I really hope our city council has more knowledge and has a sound mind, not one of fear, but has a sound mind and can actually help our city instead of driving the fear narrative, dividing the city, and causing more harm than good. We are increasing testing, and people are hiding out because their cousin's grandmother's sister had COVID. And this is a 99.9% health success rate right now. This is not okay.
Wrap it up. Your time is over, but if you could make a final statement.
Please listen to your people. This city is suffering. Stop dividing it. Bring people together. Listen to the people who are speaking right now, not just following because someone told them to do something, that are speaking.
Thank you for your comments. Tamara, next caller, please.
We have Johnathan. Johnathan, you've been invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Well, my name is Johnathan Cann, and I live in Hickory Ridge in Bayfield. Can y'all hear me?
You bet, Johnathan. Go ahead.
Awesome. First off, I'd like to say thank you just for hosting this. I know that the public appreciates it. We always appreciate our chance to share our voice and our narrative. I'm actually going to come from a different angle than most of the callers I've at least been listening to today. I would highly encourage you guys to give some substance behind the mask ordinance and be able to enforce it with some sort of fine or penalty. With that being said, I do think that it should not fall on restaurant or business owners to do such things. I think that we need to do that as, you know, if the city of Durango is going to make a mask mandate, the city of Durango should be the ones who take the full responsibility of enforcing it. But when you look at COVID cases, especially here in La Plata County right now, and you look at hospitals and you look at their numbers, those numbers don't lie. We're getting more people, we're getting more sick people, and we don't have hospital rooms for just about anybody. So right now, if you go into the hospital, you know, it's a toss-up if you're going to be able to even stay in Durango or get flown out somewhere else just to receive basic treatment. And in order to make sure our health care systems don't collapse with the rapidly rising number of COVID cases, we do need to create preventative measures. And I think the most effective and safe one can be masks. With that being said, me personally, I wear a mask. That's great. But everywhere I go, whether it be to the gas station or to different local businesses or whatever, it's a toss-up on whether or not the other people around me are wearing masks. And the only way masks are truly effective is everyone's wearing them. You wear the mask to protect the person around you, not yourself. And I don't think people have a really good base understanding of that. And I think that's a huge reason as to why we're seeing such a huge rise in COVID right now. So I just encourage you guys, keep your healthcare systems in mind, and especially our hospital and our hospital workers when considering this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next caller, please.
We have the number ending in 6633. I've invited you to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Heather Drake. I live at 8 Aquarius Place, Durango. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this call and to speak my choice and my freedom. And I am I'm really thankful that the Johnathan on the line ahead of me was not my husband. He needs to check his facts because masks don't work. I appreciate him feeling that the city of Durango wants to mandate this. Therefore, they should be the ones policing it. Don't put it on our restaurant owners, our shop owners, etc. This town is obviously pro-choice based on how they chose to vote in this last election. That pro-choice should be echoed in our choices to wear a mask or to jab a needle in our bodies and not be dictated by our city council people. This is a medical device. My doctor has not written me any type of a script to need to wear this medical device, nor does the person at the grocery store have the authority to tell me that either. These masks don't work. There's plenty of scientific facts. You know, in the beginning, we were all concerned, but now we've had time to do our research, and we know that our immune systems will work when we have fresh air and we have sunshine, and we are not breathing in our recycled waste. Our mouth and our nose are places where waste gets exported to our body. But when we have a diaper on our face, it's just clogging it up again. It's not allowing us that fresh air to support our immune systems. There's so much fear being bred into everybody, whether it's the flashing signs when you drive into town, wear a mask, and it's hogwash. We are not wearing masks for other people. If masks work, then wear it if you're sick. If not, leave us alone. I do truly hope that our voices are being heard. I appreciate the time to talk.
Thank you, Ms. Drake. Next caller, please.
We have the number ending in 9648. You're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Looks like we may have lost them.
I think so. If we can move it on. Yeah, thank you.
We have Kelly. Kelly, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Kelly Fuenzalita. I already spoke. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak again. Is that okay?
Actually, your 3 minutes is up, and thank you for your previous comments. If you have anything else, though, just please write it down and send it to us, and it will be public record. Thank you so much. We have a number of callers, so we'd like to get through as many of them as we can. Tamara?
The next caller is Katie K. Katie, I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record, unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes. Looks like we have a problem. I'm getting the error message that Katie's using an older version of Zoom. I'm going to need to promote her to panelist, it's saying, for her to speak. Is that, do I have permission to do that? I'm not sure why.
Be as inclusive as possible, and if that's a possibility that we can let her in, and in that manner, that'd be great.
Katie, if you're there, you can press *6 to unmute yourself.
I think I got it. You hear me?
We can. You're a little echoey, Katie. You may want to back away from your computer, but that's.
Does that work?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for accommodating me. You know, I really appreciate the conversations that are taking place this morning. And I really want to ask, I've listened to all the different comments, how the mask is affecting us economically, socially, and community-wise. And I would really like to address how this is going to affect us long-term. You know, they say that our greatest fear is what we put our faith in. And I think right now we are so narrow-focused on the numbers of the COVID cases, but we're not being focused on the big picture of what is happening to us. We're looking at a disease that is causing less than 1% death rate. And I would encourage you to look at the death rate of other sicknesses and diseases that have not prompted these kind of responses. My biggest concern, and I trust that you'll do that you'll look at the numbers of other diseases that create greater death rates than the COVID-19 has. But my concern is that I've only lived here for 2 years, and I have come to love Durango and have come to meet so many people that I've come to know and love. And my biggest concern is that what this is causing on a mental health level, that your mask creates, your face is the picture of your identity, and you are covering everyone's identities. And what this is creating in our community is a pandemic of fear and dissension. And I'm really concerned about the future of our children, of how they're growing up under this kind of environment and what it's creating in this community. It's creating a community of division, of fear and control and hatred. And it's putting people in a lot of positions that they are feeling overburdened by having to function under. So we can point to the business leaders that have to do that, your police that have to enforce this. I myself personally don't wear a mask because of health reasons. And I appreciate when people respect that decision. And so I would really appreciate if we could change the focus of our fear to what the long-term results of this could be. Not just economically is what we focused on, but look at what's it going to do with our mental health. Think of the people that struggle with depression, people that struggle with suicide, people that struggle with addictions. And so I'm looking at the long-term effects of what this will do to our community as a whole when we're pitting ourselves, neighbors against neighbors, business owners against patrons, our community against our leaders. I hate seeing this. I don't want us to vilify each other in the long run of this. And so I appreciate the positions that you hold, and I pray that you would take into consideration all that's been spoken of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Next caller, please.
We have a caller with a number ending in 4276. You're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Adam Redder. I am a resident of Durango. I have property out there by Elmore's Corner. I'd like to briefly discuss some fundamental freedoms that are granted to us and enumerated in the United States Constitution. And I'd like to make some comparisons. First off, each one of us is a beneficiary of our fundamental rights under the Bill of Rights: freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, and the right to vote. Those four right there are sacred in our society. So sacred that we, with respect to freedom of speech, we allow pornography. We allow terrible, terrible speech. We allow degenerate speech. Why do we allow pornography? Why do we allow degenerate speech? Because there's something called a chilling effect when you restrict speech. When you restrict speech, you chill otherwise valid speech that is important in a democracy where the marketplace of ideas will yield the greatest result. With respect to freedom of the press, we very much hold that dear as well, and we allow our press to do anything it wants whenever it wants, and we don't restrict it. In fact, the press is so unbridled today, you can barely tell what's real and what's not. Why do we allow that? Because, again, the marketplace of ideas will yield the greatest result over time, and discerning critical thinkers will ascertain the truth. Let's move on to the third fundamental right, freedom of religion. Well, that's one of the...
Redder, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I'll finish up. Freedom of religion is one of the rights that's been attacked. We haven't been able to congregate as easily as in the past. And the right to vote. Let's just remember the right to vote and the women's suffrage movement. Now, when we restrict fundamental freedoms, like when we tell a woman she can't have an abortion, we have to have a very good reason to do so. Typically, it's called probable cause in criminal law. If we need to search and seize your house, come in and break down your door, we need a search warrant. We need to prove with reasonable cause that crime is occurring so that the police can come in and take our things and rifle through our stuff. In order to tell a woman she can't have an abortion, it's very difficult to do that. We have to have significant things. In fact, we protect the right to terminate an unwanted pregnancy so significantly that it's really easy to do so.
Wrap up with one sentence, please.
Okay, in conclusion, if you look at the current evidence with respect to this disease, there is not sufficient evidence for probable cause to take away people's fundamental rights, and communities and counties all over the country are starting to realize this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks. Next caller, please.
We have Richard. Richard, I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes. I'm going to have to promote Richard to panelists. We're getting the same error message.
Thank you, Tamara.
Richard, you can press *6 to unmute. Well, I'm not sure what's happening. Would you like to move to the next caller?
Yes, please. We can
circle
back if we can.
We have Jeremiah Jeremiah, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good morning, Jeremiah Ackerman here. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm actually a resident of Bayfield, but obviously we do quite a bit of our commerce and shopping, dining in Durango. So I definitely think this is an important topic. And I would just like to say that through a lot of research and data that is out there, coming into this, obviously there was no factual data that represented masks prevented the spread of COVID or even the flu, which obviously is similar to. And our doctor or head of infectious disease stated himself that healthy people should not wear masks. And since the statement, the stance was reversed and everybody was told to wear masks with no true scientific facts that back up that infringement on our freedom and our choice to wear a mask or not. So, you know, people say, yeah, well, it stops your water droplets, you know, and so therefore you're stopping the spread. Well, that's not really true. Your moisture, your breath still goes out the side of your mask. Most of these masks people are wearing are not effective at all. In fact, the N95 masks are the masks that actually are effective to some degree that may be much more significant than a cloth mask or, most of the masks people are wearing. No, people aren't using those masks. So if we're not even using the masks that have any hope of stopping the spread of the virus, why are we talking about a mandate when we're not even wearing the proper mask?
You have one slightly under a minute, Jeremiah. If you can wrap it up, that'd be great.
Okay. The other thing, I'd like to say is just next time you're out, just notice how many times people are touching their mask, they're adjusting their mask. It's just a nuisance on your face. People aren't used to it. You got to reposition it. You got to, I know I've experienced that. And so when we're touching our mask constantly, science does show that it's basically a petri dish for our bacteria and virus, whatever is coming out of our mouth or whatever is coming in contact with it. And so if we're constantly touching that,
up, Jeremiah, that's
the purpose.
Your time is up.
Okay. And can I say one last thing?
Sure. One sentence, please.
Yes. The last thing I'd like to say is if you guys would look at the graphs that show when mask mandates were put in place, such as in Italy or different places, the data that we do have shows that there was no improvement in the spread or the lack thereof of the spread of these cases, that it continued to go up. In fact, it went up more in many instances. So
we can move on. Tamara, if we can take our next caller, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
We have a caller under anonymous. I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Dean, you were on mute.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Kate Halleck, and I live at 184 Canyon Creek Trail in Durango West 1. I've been listening to these callers, and I'm very thankful to everyone who has been speaking. I hope that more people will continue to come forward and to speak and to stay engaged in this public process. This has been shifting to a process that is not public, And that is my biggest concern in this issue, in this situation. Local governance, state governance, we need to be having proper, accurate representation. We need to have the voices being heard. And so I'm very thankful today that we are hearing people who are speaking up and are recognizing their rights and their authority. And so I just want to address the City Council today and ask one specific question. As we walked into this emergency, what has been identified is that this is a local disaster, is based on the definition under the code ordinances under section 9.3. And as I've been thinking about this, as we've seen the numbers, as we've been growing in our knowledge and understanding of this virus and the situation that we're in, I would like to ask the City Council to reconsider what this, what the definition in the code is under the section 9.3 of what is an emergency. Based on all of the facts, all of the information that has been presented today, we need to really reconsider what is an emergency? How is this playing out as an emergency in our community? With the 1% issue, all the numbers stated here, we need to think about this in a different way. And so I would ask that you would consider that this is not a civil emergency, that this is not your responsibility to be putting these types of regulations and expectations on business owners. And I just plead with you that you would reconsider. And I'm praying for you as our leaders of our community, that you would consider the choices that you're making, the full influence and impact that you are having on your citizens. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Okay. Hey, reading the Holy Spirit for you. Oh, God. You did good.
Next, we have Brenda. Brenda, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Brenda Folkrod. I live in the Shenandoah area of Durango. Thank you so much for letting me speak this morning. So I think that there's been so many valid statements made about the uselessness of masks. That aside, that's not something that the City Council, I believe, has any jurisdiction to decide whether or not that's in place or not. But I will say that I think that we all need to understand the correlation of the increase of cases is directly related to the increase in testing, not necessarily the increase in the fact that COVID has increased in our county. We have the La Plata County testing site that is putting at least 250 people a day through their testing. There's also Cedar Diagnostics and many other locations in Durango that are putting through a mass amount of people through testing. That is what is creating the increase in our cases. There has been studies stated that the Durango Herald has put out that the increase is caused by, they believe, and I believe San Juan Basin has stated, they believe, it's due to gathering in private homes. This has nothing to do with people walking through the city of Durango, using businesses in the city of Durango, or whether or not they're wearing masks. I definitely frequent downtown Durango, and I see in almost every business, everywhere, people wearing masks. So if they were working, the cases would go down. It's not. But what the city of Durango can do, and the city council can take up, is this question of whether or not you are going to create a legal enforcement of this wearing of masks. And I believe that that is creating a nanny state in which the city of Durango shouldn't want to be a part of and shouldn't do. It's not fair to the businesses. It's not fair to the citizens of the city or those people who come into our city, which we have a huge tourist population as well as people who live in surrounding cities come into our city. If you create that, you're going down a path that I believe is irreversible for the city of Durango. And I also don't believe that the city council nor the city of Durango has the resources and the wherewithal to appropriately enforce this mandate. There is no way that our budget should be spent on mandating this silliness. I don't believe you have the people resources or the budget resources to enforce this and create this mandate. That's my statement.
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate it. Thanks. Tamara, do you have another caller?
We have Andrea. Andrea, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
I don't have the resources to do that.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Andrea. You bet.
Awesome. My name is Andrea, and I am a lifelong resident of Durango. Currently living in the Rocket Point Apartments. I'm really grateful to hear so many perspectives that are standing up for our freedom in this country, because that is what we were supposedly founded upon, yes? I would like to illuminate the idea that we are proposing strict mask mandates based on increasing case numbers. Why are cases increasing? Because we have been encouraging people to take more tests. So naturally, when people take more tests, we're going to find more cases. Why is that? Because the PCR test, the way that it was designed, can find anything that it's looking for. Now, the creator of the PCR test has actually, he actually said that this test has not been, it was not meant to diagnose anything. We have disregarded that and we are using it as a diagnostic anyways. Furthermore, we are using that diagnostic to justify fear and isolation as a means of creating healthy solutions. I don't want to downplay the fact that people are getting sick, but I would like to eliminate that we have just blindly accepted what the media, what the absolutely corrupt and agenda-serving media has fed us to believe is the cause of people's sickness. We're not looking at the actual roots of where this could be. And in my opinion, and I'm sure many of the people on this call will agree, that goes down to our nutrition and what we are feeding our cells of our body and the air that we are breathing and the water that we are drinking. We have systematically poisoned all of those things. And then we're letting some people that have corrupt amounts of power
You have about 1 minute to wrap up, if you could, please. Thank you.
Tell us what the cause is. I would like to, God, I have so much to say. So the PCR test is whack, basically. And this all can be traced back to the Flexner report. Back in 1910, Andrew Carnegie, in the name of philanthropy, decided to shift our medical system towards allopathic systems instead of natural, which has basically led us to the place where the pharmaceutical companies are guiding all of our decisions. Questioningcovid.com, if anybody would like to look more into that, is a good place to look. And lastly, I would like to just look at the Merriam-Webster's definition of tyranny.
Andrea, your time is up. I'm sorry.
All right, I'm finishing my sentence. Thank you. The definition of tyranny, as defined by Merriam-Webster, is oppressive power exerted by the government. Now, forcing us to wear anything, it doesn't matter what it is, forcing anybody to wear anything on their bodies, it's an oppressive exertion of the government. So I encourage you, Mr. Dean Brokey, and all of your cohorts to really hear that and integrate that, and stop being tyrannical assholes. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And with that, we probably got to move on to another caller.
We have Harrison up next. Harrison, you've been invited to speak. State your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 30 minutes. 33 minutes, sorry.
Thank you. My name is Harrison Wendt. Due to previous threats and stuff, I don't feel comfortable giving my address, but I just want to say that I'm incredibly disappointed to hear all of this talk about tyranny and calling our city council assholes and so forth. I think that, I guess I just don't understand when public health became, like people started becoming so disregarding of public health and people's health and safety. I think it's interesting that almost every health department within the United States of America says that masks do work, but then there's this group of people who have decided that masks don't work. My uncle was in a coma for 6 months from COVID-19. He was an anti-masker. Now, when I talk to him, he tells me all he wishes is that he had worn a mask, because what happened to him and his lifelong kidney damage and having to go to dialysis 3 times a week affects him and hurts him every day. I struggle hearing from people who are not from Durango, putting their 2 cents into this. I know that they use the resources here in Durango. And my biggest issue right now is that I struggle to hear just the complete disregard for other people's health and safety. I don't really have anything else further to say, except I encourage the city council to start enforcing the mask mandate. As we can see, there are businesses offering discounts, and the owners of those businesses are violent and vile people. And by allowing them to continue to portray this lawlessness, it'll just get worse. And I think the city of Durango has every right to step in and start enforcing masks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Next caller, please.
We have Roy up next. Roy, I've invited you to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Roy Vreeland. I'm up in Sky Ridge in Durango, Colorado. I'd like to start by saying how disappointing it is in our elected city officials that this could even possibly be a mandate that would be pushed and that it's gotten this far. I'd like to thank everyone who's spoken already, who's done a lot more research in their fact finding and everything else than I, but I appreciate your preparedness and coming to the table with these valid arguments. But my background, I'm a former military member and small business owner currently in the area. And something like this is just far, far, far too much for a community from a number of perspectives, where our mental health and well-being is being affected by this. For our city to try to further divide and separate the community is sad. And for the last speaker, Harrison, I think you should have led your conversation by saying that you're a part of the licensing organization in Durango who's set to directly benefit from the funds that these fees would make. So on that side of things, from authority-wise, the city of Durango, how are you going to enforce this? That you'd have to utilize the police department or something to try to get folks to pay these fines, but it's just not possible. It's out of your scope, and I'm so far against it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roy. Next caller.
We have the number ending in 7303. I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes. You can
Hi, my name is Dan. Can you hear me?
We sure can, Dan. Go ahead.
Great. I live at 27846 Highway 550, Durango. The reason for my call, I appreciate everybody jumping in and providing their input. I haven't heard the entire meeting, so I may have missed somebody that took this perspective. But So sorry if it is redundant, but I do want to point out, and I'd like for the council members to think about kind of what the end game is here. I know a lot of people are excited right now about the vaccines that are coming out, and what that can do for not just our community, but the country and the world as a whole. And I want the council members to think about this. If you are going to enforce masks, from my perspective, it's not a huge leap for me to assume that you would like to enforce the vaccine as well. And I think that's way beyond the bounds and the scope of what you should be allowed to do. And so if I back that up a bit, I think it's way beyond the bounds for you to enforce the mask as well. You're making decisions for that the individual person should be able to make. And, whether you are for or against taking a vaccine, that's your choice. The same should be true about the mask, because I really do think that you can, connect the string from one to the next. And I'd like to hear from each counselor, where do you stand with regards to the vaccine? Is that something that you would enforce in order to, for the health of the community? I think it's too much of a leap. I'd like to hear your comments.
Okay. We have, this is a listening session. We don't this is not a public hearing. So we'll just listen to your comments.
Okay. Fair enough. But it is something that I want you to give some thought to, because I think it's an important question to ask.
And
Thank
it's
you.
not part of this. It's not part of this discussion today. So thank you so much. Next caller, please.
Next, we have Roy. Roy, I've allowed you to speak or invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself. You'll have 30 seconds.
Hi, I already spoke. I'm good to go, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you.
Might, Tamara, if we can hold for just a second, I'd take a poll amongst council here. We've been talking for a little over an hour and a half and taking comment. We do have major discussion to have today as well. I just want to do a time check, and oftentimes in council we accept further public written comment, and given the time frame and extensive amount of public participation that we've had today, how we want to proceed, if we want to get into our discussion or continue to take public comment till we're done.
I would recommend, Dean, just from my point of view, we have 3 people with raised hands in the attendees. We listen to them and then go forward with our meeting.
Absolutely. That's anybody else? I'm totally open to that as well. And we may want to take a break before we enter our other discussions. But if that's okay with everybody, that would be my decision as well. Okay. With that, Tamara, can we have our next caller, please? Thank you.
Next caller is Hick. You are now invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jeff Hickox. I'm assuming you were referring to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jeff, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dean. I, unlike a lot of the commenters so far, would like to speak in support of the proposed ordinance and perhaps focus the conversation back on the actual context and intent of the proposal regarding temporary safety measures to be taken in public, not private places, while we await an effective vaccination. With respect to the businesses, the intent is to protect what we have come to call frontline workers who, as a function of their employment, are exposed to a steady stream of customers, may or may not be infected and contagious with the COVID virus, as many with the virus are in fact asymptomatic. So it's hard to know for that window. So that person serving you as a teller, clerk, bagger, or fulfilling any other customer service role, in my opinion at least, deserves the respect and protection that a simple measure such as wearing a mask while in those places of business offers. whether one feels healthy themselves or not. If exposed or infected before that teller or clerk or customer service provider becomes symptomatic, they may very well transmit the virus to a more vulnerable person. So I encourage the callers and others listening to think of mask wearing as more of a community service and a show of respect for your fellow citizens. And regarding enforcement, while the ordinance does place responsibility on business owners to require that employees wear a mask, as I read it, there's nothing in the proposed ordinance that requires a store owner or employee to enforce the ordinance against customers. They can, of course, refuse to serve a customer who refuses to respect the mandate, but the responsibility of enforcing the legal mandate lies with the city. That, of course, raises the question of whether the city can, in fact, commit the resources to doing so. Personally, I hope they can and will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickox. And next caller, Tamara.
Next, we have Tim. Tim, you're invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Tim Walsworth. I live at 887 2nd Ave in Memphis, but I work in Durango. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I would just give one fact for you guys as you're considering this. I've been tracking our numbers very closely for many weeks and months now, and one of the newer things I've started looking at is hospitalizations and ICU bed usage. And this stuff does not show up on the San Juan Basin Public Health Department website as clearly as I would like it to. So I get my data from the state's website. And what it shows right now is that there is not any ICU beds available. 0. And so look it up for yourself on the state's website. Look at the data, click on hospitalization data. It doesn't mean that all those beds are filled with COVID patients, but it means we don't have any. And where I go with that is anything we can do to protect the health of our community, slow things down, keep our businesses open is appropriate. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Any other callers, Tamara?
We have Aaron. Aaron, I've invited you to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Erin Lindstrom, and I live up at Hermosa. I would like to thank, as well as echo the majority of people speaking out against this city proposition. The purpose of government is not to grant us our individual sovereign rights. The only purpose of government is to protect those rights, not to take them away for nothing more than fear porn. The evidence that masks do not work in preventing the spread of COVID is extensive. We also know that PCR tests are not a reliable diagnostic tool in this instance. Both of these realities have been attested to by thousands of doctors and scientists such as Senator Scott Jensen, Dr. Roger Hodkinson, and the many, many doctors involved with the Great Barrington Declaration, as well as the World Freedom Alliance and even the great benevolent Dr. Fauci himself. This mandate, the numbers are being manipulated, and we're all becoming aware of this. This mandate is an attack on small business by basically blackmailing them into enforcing mandates and overreach on your behalf. These businesses have already suffered the loss of revenue from the initial lockdown in March, and now with their business reduced to 25%, you're proposing more fines. And it's appalling that the very first speaker even suggested a possible revocation of business license for ineffective enforcement of this nonsense. This is absolutely unacceptable. People are suffering, children are suffering for not being in school. People are worried about how they're going to pay their electric bills, and businesses are suffering. As a community, we have a choice on how to move forward. Are we going to allow junk science based on a very wicked agenda to subjugate our own personal liberties and freedoms? Or are we going to think constitutionally and scientifically by questioning false narratives, and fear-mongering, and become a beacon of bravery and hope and pushing back on the unjustified hive mind and uphold common sense, education, and freedom? That's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me say my piece today.
You bet, Aaron. Thank you so much. And next caller, please.
We have Mark. Mark, you've been invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Mark Waller. I live at 800 Hartwood Lane in Bayfield. And I just wanted to say that, Aaron, you spoke very, very well the comments that I would make to this meeting. It's not about whether, to me, this mandate is not about whether or not our community is going to stay safe or whether masks work or not. It's about whether the city council is within their grounds and their jurisdiction to mandate a mask wearing with penalization and fines and things like that. And I think that it is a terrible overreach of the city council's authority to do so. Just to add on a little bit to what Aaron said, there was just a study that came out of Denmark that studied almost 6,000 people. I'm not terribly prepared for this because I just read about it this morning, but so my numbers won't be exact. I'm driving right now, but almost 6,000 people were studied. They took about almost 5,000 of those people completed the study where they took half the group wore masks for I think it was 60 days and or maybe more, maybe it was 90 days, and the other half did not wear masks whenever they left their house. They then went back and traced those people and decided, or looked at how many people got infected in each group, and the bottom line was that only 1.8% of the group that wore masks all the time tested positive at the end of the study period, and only 2.1% of people who never wore a mask out of their house tested positive. The difference was statistically insignificant. They were doing the study with the hopes of seeing that 100% mask wearing would lower the risk of infection by at least 50%. What they got was a statistically insignificant difference. And I think we really need to look at this kind of data that's coming out, as well as what Aaron was talking about with the PCR testing, and ask ourselves, why are we doing these things? So I really hope that the City Council of Durango will leave it in the hands of the citizens and of the business owners to decide what's going to be mandated in their place of business and in public spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next caller, please. Drive safe, Mark.
We have a caller under the name Galaxy. You are now invited to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kari, and I actually had sent a personal message to Dean because he is somebody I call friend. But my biggest concern is that I'm already being discriminated against because I cannot wear a mask. And I actually have a doctor's note because of things that have happened in my past. And so when you, and I'm sorry, this whole thing is pretty hard for me already, but when you make everybody wear a mask, even those of us who can't, what it is physically doing to our bodies is destroying us. And I actually have medical proof, but it's a shame for me to even have to relive what goes on in me every time somebody requires me or forces me to wear a mask or mask shames me. For people like me, we need a provision, at least if I agree with the numerous callers who said that our rights are being infringed upon, but regardless of that, if you guys still go ahead and take away our rights, will you make some sort of provision like the governor has to help those of us who absolutely cannot wear a mask? Or are we just going to be discriminated against and be put aside and not be able to go and take care of our family's needs and be able to go to the store or be able to eat or anything like that? Have you thought about those of us, and there are many of us who cannot wear a mask, have you thought about what it will do to us, regardless of what it's already physically doing to everybody else? And so my question is, what will happen to us? Are we just discriminated against and that's okay? I'm really struggling with this, and I hope that you will really consider this for us. And I thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And thank you so much. Next caller, please.
Mayor, I don't see any more raised hands this time.
All right. I'll take a poll if we need to take a short break, everybody, or if that would be appropriate. And then we can get into the action item for further discussion on the legal front here. I know we've got probably a fairly significant discussion ahead of us, so we want to take 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. 5. Barbara knows where he votes 5. I say 5. Okay, let's do it. We'll be right back. Thank you so much. And for those of you listening in, tolerate us while we take a short break. Good morning or good afternoon at this point. This is Mayor Dean Brookie, and we are reconvening our session of City Council special meeting, this virtual meeting on Monday. It's now 12:31 on the 23rd of November, 2020. We just finished public participation for about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half, and now we're starting action item number 3, which is an emergency ordinance of the City of Durango supporting the enforcement of state executive and public health orders by requiring masks in the City of Durango and providing other enforcement to decrease the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, we have been presented with an emergency ordinance O-2020-17. And who wants to start off the discussion? Do we have questions of council, or would we like a presentation by our city attorney or our city manager?
We are prepared to do a presentation if that's what the council would desire.
I think that's appropriate. Jose, thanks for stepping up. Appreciate it.
Before we do that, do you want to finish reading the comments that we were discussing earlier?
Thank you, Dirk. There was a significant additional comment. We received written comment from Leanne Jalon, Executive Director of San Juan Basin Health Department. If we could read that into the record, and we'll discuss one other topic as well about our meeting time and transparency today. So if we could read that into this, we've asked Amber Blake to read that. Thank you.
Thank you. November 22nd, 2020. Attention, Jose Madrigal, City Manager, comments on revised proposed ordinance to require masks in the city and enforcement of public health orders. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on the city's proposed ordinance to require masks in the city. San Juan Basin Public Health applauds the efforts of the city to encourage mask wearing in order to prevent disease transmission. It is one of the best tools that we currently have available, along with social distancing, washing of hands, etc., to arrest the spread of COVID-19. As you know, La Plata County has seen more new cases of COVID-19 in the past 3 weeks than in the first 7 months of the pandemic. While San Juan Basin Public Health is the lead agency for our multi-jurisdictional government-wide COVID-19 response, the scale and potential consequences of this emergency require coordination of all jurisdictional authorities and capabilities, including skilled personnel and resources, to support the incident management team at San Juan Basin Health. San Juan Basin Health formally requests emergency support from the City of Durango. As you are aware, the Colorado Disaster Emergency Act and the City of Durango's charter, as well as the state's COVID executive order and the public health orders, presume a coordinated effort across jurisdictions to meet the needs of this emergency, both regarding mask wearing and regarding all necessary functions to protect the health of our community during this emergency. Please also find the Elected Officials Guide to Emergency Management attached for your reference. All of the orders and acts that I read had links provided. By electing to form its own municipal emergency management capabilities and authorities, the City of Durango is responsible for emergency preparedness, response, and recovery activities within its borders. Coordination of multi-agency emergency support within the county may be carried out by a county-wide Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, which involves all appropriate jurisdictional staff, emergency responders, and emergency management, and follows all local governments' jurisdictional laws, regulations, and policies. In order to best protect the health and safety of all during this emergency, San Juan Basin Public Health requests that the City of Durango carry out its emergency response duties in coordination with the countywide EOC. With this in mind, please find comments on the proposed outlined ordinance below, divided into two sections. One for mask wearing and one that addresses multi-jurisdictional support for the entirety of the COVID-19 incident, including but not limited to enforcement of all state and local COVID-19 related executive and public health orders. Regarding masks, again, San Juan Basin Public Health applauds this effort. San Juan Basin Public Health also suggests that the city add to this great first step by also using this ordinance to allow the use of all city authorities and capabilities to support mask wearing citywide. Governor Polis, through Executive Order D 2020-138, encourages local agencies to consider whether the public health, safety, or welfare requires summary temporary suspension of the businesses, including liquor, license. San Juan Basin Public Health supports this approach as it sets the expectation that all businesses within the city limits follow established laws and regulations, and sends a clear message to the community that city government is concerned about health, safety, and welfare during this COVID emergency. Therefore, San Juan Basin Public Health suggests that the city add language to this proposed ordinance to allow use of all businesses and licensing authorities to support in order to best comport with the governor's executive order. Regarding additional public health measures to slow the spread of COVID-19, San Juan Basin Public Health suggests that the City of Durango add language to this ordinance to ensure use of all city authorities and capabilities to support the entirety of a local COVID-19 response and recovery, including but not limited to enforcement of all COVID-19 related state and local executive and public health orders across the jurisdiction. The state's Public Health Order 20-36, which includes additional mitigation measures such as occupancy, capacity limits, signage, and last call closure times, and household gathering guidance, states, quote, "This order will be enforced by all appropriate legal means. Local authorities are encouraged to determine the best course of action to encourage maximum compliance. Failure to comply with this order could result in penalties, including jail time and fines, and may also be subject to discipline on a professional license based upon the Applicable Practice Act." End quote. Therefore, enforcement of all necessary mitigation efforts, San Juan Basin Public Health recommends incorporating relevant state and local orders by reference where appropriate in order to prevent the potential for conflicts with the city's ordinance. Lastly, please be aware that while the comments above address the proposed ordinance specifically, San Juan Basin Public Health looks forward to using our collective local emergency management capabilities, authorities, and partnerships to continue providing all necessary emergency support functions to our local community. San Juan Basin Public Health requests this support in order to effectively respond locally to a global pandemic. Again, thank you for the continued partnership and collaboration to protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents, save lives, and plan for our economic recovery. Best regards, Leanne Jalon, Executive Director.
Thank you, Amber. We had one other comment that came in from on our portal line that discussed the why we were having a meeting on a Monday morning, for one, and the timing around this meeting, and also the transparency of the meeting. And perhaps if I could impose on our City Attorney Dirk Nelson to talk about the timing and how this meeting came to be held on a Monday morning as an emergency call.
Yeah, as you recall, the discussion about having a special meeting came out of last Tuesday's regular meeting. The state statute is clear on open meetings law that we are only required to give 24 hours notice. That's deemed to be sufficient notice. In this case, it was posted on Friday. Unfortunately, I think the newspaper had the date wrong, but it was properly posted. I would, and it's certainly something that council is set to take action on. The charter does envision public input evidence, as it's called in the charter, for an emergency ordinance. I would state that because we had a great deal of public input, that indeed people did know about it, and so I see no problem with the notice in this given for this meeting.
Thank you for that clarification, and it's unfortunate that the Herald may have messed up a time, but certainly we've had a couple hours of testimony here. So with that, Jose, if we could go tee you up for comments about our proposed ordinance.
Hey, thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you see the screen? Is it sharing properly?
We sure can.
Okay. Staff just has a brief presentation based on the direction that we received at the last council meeting that we'll go over. Myself, Dirk, and Chief Framer are available for any questions. First one, just the overview. We had a lot of extensive discussion. We took the direction that we received on the 17th from the council. We looked at what I would call modifying the ordinance to fit in some of the things that the council had asked for us to incorporate. There was talk about a Durango Cares campaign, a public relations campaign to encouraging mask wearing, and a little bit of discussion in regards to the utilization of the CARES funding to assist. The mask requirements, we've again had some substantial conversation. Don't mean to read all of this to you, but what we are looking is kind of the same thing that we had, except we're not doing a mandatory mask zone, for instance, but we're actually doing it across the city and city limits wide. This is not for outside, this is for indoor public space. And we have kind of kept the same formula of the ordinance, unless there's a couple changes. But if you look at it, the owner, operator, or manager of any business shall have an obligation to ensure that all employees of that business comply with the provisions of this emergency ordinance when such employees are within the public space occupied by the business. But there is no requirement that is in here that for the business owners or the managers to enforce the public, but just for their employees. Am I correct on that, Dirk?
Yes, they can ask people to leave, and that's when the trespass provisions come in. Yes, that's right.
Okay. And then the second part is going to the Durango Local Licensing Authority. That gives us the authority to take any and all disciplinary actions against the holder of a liquor license if they're violating any of the provisions of the state health order or executive order, or any issued by the governor of this emergency order. And this ordinance terminates on January 22nd, 2021, unless sooner repealed or otherwise extended. And I'm going to pass it over to Chief, if he's available, to talk a little bit about how they plan on doing the enforcement and the enforcement team that we've been able to set up.
Absolutely. Thank you, City Manager. Good afternoon, Council. So what we're looking at right now is we're looking at a three-tiered approach if this is passed into law, or if we're going to continue to enforce the laws that we currently have on the books. Tier one, essentially, is going to be an informational campaign, and we're going to call on the assistance of other city employees, to include members of our team as well, to go out and basically act as ambassadors to the community, just to inform people that of what our current laws are locally, and what the requirements will be. The tier two system, which will be the next level, which is already essentially in effect with the police department, is we will have our police services technicians follow up on any public health order violation that comes in through San Juan Basin Health. through our dispatch center or through our online reporting system. And we will see the validity of what those complaints could be as the orders are currently stood. And then the last portion of order, tier 3, will be when our police officers will go out and they will actually take an enforcement action, which could be in the form of a formal notice of warning, or it could be to actually cite a citation to an individual if need be, depending on what law is going to be applicable at any particular time.
When looking at one of the questions that came up was the CARES funding and what was available for the city. We did receive about $732,000 in funding. Right now, we do have a balance left over of $693,000. We have tasked staff together to see what we can do to use that funding to support our community. We have looking at 3 different bucket loads to place this funding. First, there's about an estimated of $113,000 of city expenses that we would look to have reimbursed. Secondly, we'd like to open up about $180,000 for our community foundations, nonprofits that have pivoted and provided emergency services in this time of COVID. And then also opening up $400,000 for the City of Durango Business Relief. Obviously, there's different opportunities that are available for funding. You could do rent or mortgage assistance, utility payments, employee payroll, accounts payable, and other bills, payment for fixed debt, and adapt and or repurpose their business to serve the community. This is one where we are actually reaching out to DOLA as we speak to discuss about the third-party delivery to see if this could help with some refunding or financing some of those higher delivery fees, since the businesses would have to pivot and adjust. So looking to get confirmation if that was something that would be available. But we are looking at making over about $580,000 of this $693,000 available for the community and businesses.
Jose, could we go back a slide, please? So you mentioned the Durango CARES program. Is there any money that is earmarked in this campaign for that, or where is that going to be expected to be funded from?
The Durango CARES could be through the city expenses, or it could also be through our general fund. We do have some areas where we have funding available as we still continue to move through to find out exactly what the cost of that is going to be. We are working on that right now, so we would have funding available for that and would be able to maneuver if necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose.
And then just the timeline for business relief, we do have an application ready. We are looking at, after this meeting, going ahead and taking that live, marketing through bid, through the Colorado Restaurant Association, trying to get the word out as many different outlets as we can, letting them know that we have the applications available for the businesses to apply for. Applications looking right now as a tentative date of December 9th, the funding being dispersed on the 18th, and then final reporting on January 31st. The CARES funding must be expended or at least encumbered by December 31st is when it expires. So we're doing everything that we can on an expedited timeline to ensure that we have used that funding that's available. And that does conclude the city staff's presentation.
Great, Jose. Thank you so much. And thank you for showing us that proposed distribution of the CARES funding. That was my question was the same as Councilor Baxter's as well, because we had talked at length about some expenditure of those funds for the educational piece. And I think we still think that's, at least in my opinion, that's a critical part of this. So I'd entertain any other conversation amongst council regarding any of the specifics or any of the testimony that we've heard today or modifications that were proposed. And I've got some regarding the coordination for of what Leanne was talking with Dirk a little bit later on. So, but I'll let him think about that. Some of the things that we heard in her written comments and how we have dovetailed this document with the things that she was suggesting, the Colorado Disaster Emergency Act, et cetera. So any other counselor starting, perhaps just go around the horn with Pro Tem Baxter. Not put you on the on the hot seat, but we can each have a few comments.
Yeah, I don't know that I need to go first.
Okay. Anybody like to go first? Go right ahead, Melissa. Thank you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay.
You're still on mute.
Go let you figure that out. Perhaps I think Counselor Noseworthy looks like she might be prepared to have some comments.
Maybe Tamara can help with your problem, Melissa. Well, if nobody wants to go ahead, geez.
Okay. Right.
I've got a person vacuuming outside my office, so I can't speak right now. They're trying to stop it.
And we have Chris Patin is on the phone as well. So Chris, feel free to weigh in whenever you're ready.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Yeah. Did you have any comments?
Oh, that's good.
Off with
you know what? I better try not to at this point. I am out in the middle of nowhere camping and called in because I felt this was critical.
Absolutely.
And I've been dropped from my call probably 20 times since we started. So I don't want to put you all through that. Why don't I listen for a bit? If I have anything to add, I will weigh in.
Okay. All right. Very good, Chris. Thanks for your thoughts. And Kim, if you have thoughts, go ahead. If I'm prepared to go ahead and say some things as well.
Well, so this really confuses me because I don't understand why we need to pass a law or an ordinance. Because under Colorado law, the counties and the local public health agencies have the authority to administer and enforce a health order. And it is unlawful in the state of Colorado to not abide by those health orders. There's already a law in place, and there's already a mechanism in place to enforce those laws. I completely agree that we do not want to overwhelm, which is going to be a challenge, our healthcare facilities, not just for COVID patients, but for everyone else. And I think the best way to do that is to go through the current existing procedure and process that San Juan Basin Health has in place for investigating health orders. So they have inspectors who go into restaurants and other places and investigate whether or not health orders are being complied with. And I do not understand why we can't follow that same policy and procedure. I do understand that San Juan Basin Health does not have the capacity right now to do that. So I would suggest that in response to San Juan Basin Health's request for emergency support, that we do exactly that. We support them, whether it be with people or money or whatever it is, to do what they already have in place to do, which doesn't require an ordinance or a law by the city of Durango to do. And it results in exactly the same thing as our ordinance suggests, which is that we are observing mask wearing plus all the other health orders, and any violations of them are written up or cited or what have you. And if people won't leave or wear masks, the trespass orders are still in place. And if we want to go as far as a business license removal, we can try that, but that's a long-term process. That's not immediate, it's not timely. So I don't understand the need for a law. I think we can do this within the context of how San Juan Basin Health is organized already, help them, support them, give them resources, help them make it happen, do it for them. I don't know what it looks like exactly, but we have exactly what Chief Bramer just put up on the board. Those tiers, most of them are already being done, and they can be done under this process. There are provisions already, re the local licensing authority, that don't require the ordinance. They're already there. I'm confused as to why we need a city law to follow through on laws that already exist. And I would prefer to focus on our robust Durango Cares program. I would prefer to be out there in a positive way in the community, encouraging compliance with state health orders, not forcing compliance with state orders. So I'm not happy that San Juan Basin Health is attempting to shift the responsibility to the city for this. And I believe we are fully willing to support them in doing that job. So that's my opinion.
Okay, Dirk, maybe you can help us out with that in a moment, but maybe we go around the horn here. I have some thoughts and the history why we found ourselves at a loss earlier, which is what you're suggesting, I think, in
No, I'm not suggesting anything that you're about to say because I don't think you understand. So I'm sorry. I would rather that you not say that I'm suggesting something. Let me say it. And if you want to be clear on it, ask me, please.
I'll be entirely clear, and I wasn't suggesting anything. And so Barbara, go right ahead.
Thank you. Finally got the vacuum cleaner outside in the lobby to stop. So I would like to hear from Dirk, the answer to Councilor Baxter's question. But I'd also like to say, well, I don't understand the law. I fully support the effort to make our community safe and the public safety. And I think in terms of, speed limits, that's a public safety issue. Seat belts is a public safety issue. No smoking in buildings is a public safety issue, all of which we can't unilaterally enforce, but we enforce sufficient enough time that it is a deterrent to people. So I'd like to hear Dirk's answer for why to Kim's question, and then I'd like to speak specifically to the ordinance at hand.
If I might just interject as well, I mean, we found ourselves here needing additional teeth, if you will, because we found that the previous situation we were in, which is didn't allow us the enforcement capabilities to do virtually anything, right? So we asked staff to prepare something with teeth and investigate those legal avenues. And so if in fact we have teeth without this, I also would be in agreement with Mayor Pro Tem Baxter. Short of that, the public's expecting us, at least many of our constituents are expecting us to come up with some teeth and with that, some action. So Dirk has tried to mold this into something with teeth. If we have substantial protection with just enforcing San Juan Basin public health order, great. But Dirk, if you can answer that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll try to do that. I think the simplest way to say this is that it's a different set of teeth. San Juan Basin, the state law and so the health orders are enforceable through the statute that Mayor Pro Tem Baxter referred to, giving the authority to San Juan Basin Health to request the county attorney or the district attorney to enforce those health orders. And I said on Tuesday night, and I'll repeat, it's my opinion that we as the city do not have any direct enforcement authority for those health orders. In other words, we can't write a citation into our municipal court for a citation for a violation of those health orders or the governor's executive orders for that matter. So this is an attempt to set up a process whereby we adopt a set of rules that we can enforce with our own enforcement mechanisms, which mean primarily, and again, the idea here is not to immediately start writing citations, but it would allow those to be written in cases where compliance is not forthcoming. But again, this is a completely separate avenue of enforcement, and I hope that that's clear. I think that in this case that the health orders are enforceable, not just directly by us. So, I also state that the liquor authority is much clearer because the liquor code has been amended to include a provision that says a violation of a health order or an executive order is a violation of the liquor code, which would allow the city to enforce. I totally agree that we don't need to do anything further in that regard. The language that was included here was primarily for the purposes of informing people that the liquor code allows us to do that. Our business license situation is somewhat different. We do have provisions that would allow for the possibility of a suspension or a revocation for the grounds that we talked about on Tuesday night. But those provisions, again, are based on violations of law that we don't directly have any authority to enforce. So I stated on Tuesday night, and I'll reiterate, that I think our ability to revoke a business license or suspend a business license is stronger if we have our own regulation in that regard. I hope that helps.
So San Juan Basin Health has told me, Leanne has told me that we have provisions within our business license that allow us to rescind it based upon lack of failure for health ordinances, health orders that are issued by the state or by San Juan Basin Health. So if that's not the case, then she misinformed me.
Well,
So
I think it's a
those
matter
already exist.
I think it's a matter of interpretation, and I think that there is language in there that talks about, and I'm paraphrasing it. It doesn't use the word imminent health threat, but it's effectively that. I think it's called a hazard to health, imminent hazard to health. So, we don't, as someone pointed out, we don't employ doctors, we don't employ health experts. So we'd be relying on San Juan Basin Health for those grounds to determine whether or not we should indeed undertake a revocation of a business license on that basis. There's a variety of reasons why we can suspend or revoke a business license. And again, they were in the PowerPoint that was shown to council on Tuesday night. So, I'm not saying that it would be impossible to do that, but our task is much easier, in my opinion, if we have grounds that says that they have violated this particular order, and the insertion of the language that requires a business owner to assure that their employees wear masks is intended to direct some energy at the issue of most of the complaints that I'm aware of that we receive for various businesses typically involves that issue. People will be complaining that employees of a business are not wearing masks or they're not wearing them properly. So again, if that provision of the ordinance is intended to strengthen that provision. So I think it's a matter of interpretation about where our powers lie. I will also say that the language in the executive order, number 138, which set up the basic mask wearing requirement, did contain language that encouraged the local entities to seek to enforce it in any way possible, including business licenses. It's my opinion that language doesn't imbue any new authority. It just simply encourages a effort to investigate every possible avenue of enforcement.
So if San Juan Basin Health had the capacity to do so, would they also be able to go out and issue fines and citations to people for not wearing masks and to businesses for not following the health orders?
What it says is that they can request that the district attorney bring an action, which would be a criminal action in state court, which would then ultimately possibly lead to a conviction, which would mean there would be fines associated with that.
No, so what I'm asking though is, do they have the capability of adding that into their inspector system for health orders and issuing fines and citations just like they do for the non-wearing of a hairnet?
Well, I can't speak to how they enforce those now, but I think the state law does allow them, again, through a request. I'll finish what I started to say earlier. There's a prosecutorial aspect to that request to the district attorney's office. And then there's a civil remedy available to have the county attorney seek out injunctive relief in county court, or district court, to compel someone to either comply or have a court order that they cease certain activities. So it's their authority on the health order is not something that I'm prepared to give an opinion about.
Right, but they do have the capability of shutting down a business if they so choose to do so. They just have not chosen to do so.
Or health violations, yes. So if they go in and that they're not,
It's not my belief that they have ability to impose fines, or do they have? They're asking for our cooperation.
I'm more than happy to cooperate. I just don't know it takes a law to do so.
Well, for us to. I believe it gives us the teeth to do that in a more efficient manner, is what it basically boils down to, is what Dirk's tried to articulate. There's certain things they can do, but their avenue is to go through the DA and go through the county and that process, whereas the problems that have been pointed out to us as a council are specific locations in downtown and around town that are have been problematic, and we should be able to deal with. That's what we've been asked to do. And I think this.
Well, we're dealing with them right now in almost exactly the same way that we're proposing to deal with it. Chief Bramer just said tier 1 and tier 2 are essentially what we're following. And tier 3 has to do with calling the police for trespass, for example, which we can already do. I don't understand the difference. We're already doing it.
I don't believe that we are. It certainly isn't evident to the public that we are doing anything.
Well, then that's a poor communication on our part.
Can someone, when we had this ordinance, the mask ordinance in place, the emergency mask ordinance in place previously, I believe we put it in place, was it May or April?
I think it was June, yeah. And it was actually an order that was imposed by the interim city manager at that time under the authority granted in the resolution that council adopted. So the council did not previously adopt an ordinance in this regard. It was a mask order. And again, that was done prior to the governor having adopted a statewide order.
And what type of teeth did it have, Dirk, Mr. Nelson?
It did contemplate that we would be able to file an action. We didn't issue any citations to my knowledge. Chief can chime in on that. I mean, it just had the general enforcement authority under the code. It didn't have anything specific in terms of a fine schedule or anything like that.
Correct, but it had enforcement authority under the code to enforce compliance with mask wearing, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, we could have cited, I mean, it did provide for the ability to cite someone for not wearing masks.
You're freezing, probably at a good time. We all want to freeze right now.
Oh, you're frozen? I'm frozen?
You're unfrozen now.
Okay, sorry. It did, but it was a little less specific than the current authority in terms of how that would be done. It was just under the general authority to issue citations for failure to comply with the city code. Basically, that's
and from what I understand, sorry earlier, you guys, I got kicked off and I couldn't find it on my screen to unmute myself. Do you know how it just blacks out? Anyway, that's what happened. I apologize. But this conversation's gone well anyway, because this is a good, I did want to clarify that email. Kim, you had sent that email to council. So those were questions I wanted to clarify. And I'm still, in comparison with the past, then from what I understand, Dirk, if this ordinance were to be implemented, it would allow us possibly a wider range of enforcement options, or it covers other things.
It does cover other things. And I will also remind council that the prior order did have the same language that this ordinance has, is that prior to issuing any citations, we would go to great lengths to try to seek voluntary compliance. So this does contemplate that. We would potentially we could issue citations as described in the ordinance. Again, the best way I know how to explain this is you're giving yourself a direct avenue to write citations in the municipal court that could be enforced via that process through the municipal court, rather than going through more of a state court process through San Juan Basin Public Health.
So why are we analyzing also the possibility of the previous order that Melissa is referring to? Why haven't we discussed that possibility?
Well, frankly, because the other one was done quickly. It was done early on because it was pressure to put something in place. This one, I think the idea was that this one would be more appropriate to have council review and adopt. It would be a bit more, have a little bit more force, if you will, if council adopted it. So does that answer your question? Why are we doing it this way instead of the way we did it before?
No, it doesn't answer that question. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I think it does. I hope, and I'm happy we should take the time possibly to understand the difference, because to me it's important. And also, I guess the other question I have for you, Dirk, is, This is pretty significant change, a pretty significant implementation. Under an emergency ordinance, do we require additional public hearings, or would this be something we would just do right away?
You could adopt it today if you wanted to. Well, we took public input on receipt of evidence that I referred to earlier. So no, if you so desire, you could adopt it today and it would be effective as soon as you adopt it.
I would like to state
it's written to be effective as soon as you adopt it. And the charter says emergency ordinances are only valid for 60 days. That's why the end date is as it is.
I'd like to say that this is an ordinance by City Council, as Dirk stated, and the other, our previous mask ordinance was an emergency directive by the interim city manager as an emergency stopgap measure, and which was rescinded once the state provided a statewide mask order. So it became redundant, and we let it sunset. So this, in my mind, outlines the expectations of the owners. It states everybody's roles and expectations, and identifies those penalties. And they're not onerous. They're just what defines how the city can proceed should there be an enforceable need, and hopefully there will be none. But it does at least create that culture around where we do have some teeth. And I think that's what our citizens have been asking us for a few weeks as the cases climb in number and importance and in criticality, that we do something. And I think this responds to it. It creates, it says we're serious about enforcement in our community, and we recognize the problem. We recognize that this is a viable method of mitigation, and it's what we need to be doing as a community. Otherwise, we're going to put stress on all of our businesses, our medical community, and other frontline services. So, I'm particularly like this ordinance. There was a couple of additions by Mr. Lockwood that did clarify the customer's role as well as the employees, but we can discuss those a little bit further. But that's the basic fundamental difference I see between what we had as a stopgap measure months ago versus what we have today to address what we know is coming in the next month.
Dean, I absolutely agree that we need to raise our compliance level with health orders as high as possible. I don't have any disagreement with that. I'm just not certain that even San Juan Basin Health has said penalties are probably not the way to go, the best way to go with this. They would prefer that we educate and discuss and convince people that following those health orders are the right thing to do. And I think that that's a more inclusive way to do it. And I'm just really concerned about creating an ordinance and a law that is going to create dissension in our community rather than bringing, and I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but rather than bringing people together to do the right thing.
Right.
Dean, I ask Dirk to address the issue around customers, the language around customers being required to wear a mask.
Well, I think that's a council call. If you want to put that particular burden on, and the chief and I and Jose had a discussion about this very issue this morning. One of the concerns is that if a business owner has a confrontation with a customer, then it's going to wind up being something that the police have to handle anyway. We don't want those kind of confrontations between business owners and customers, and we've heard some of those. I'll let the chief speak to that. I think the idea is, and to the question of trespass, it is correct that if someone calls the police now and says that, hey, I've got somebody in my store who's refusing to wear a mask and I've asked them to leave and they won't leave, then the police will respond to that, and the chief can again discuss how they handle that. So that authority exists. I concur without this ordinance. So again, I think it's sort of a policy call. It's very much a policy call as to whether council wants to place that burden on the store owners to enforce as to customers. My thought in drafting it honestly was that, store owners have much more control over employees. They're obligated to require various things of employees, hand washing, hairnets, gloves in restaurants, those sorts of things. So they're accustomed to requiring actions in compliance by employees. So that's why that particular, in my case, from a drafting standpoint, included the employees, but did not specifically include customers, thinking that needs to be a council policy call.
Yeah, so Dirk, that's a really interesting comment because we don't have a law that enforces hairnet wearing.
No, we don't. But again, employees are just accustomed to requiring employees to comply with those kinds of requirements. But you're right, we don't have that. And that's effectively a health order.
Exactly. Which is what this is.
Well, this is we're creating an obligation under our.
No, I didn't mean our ordinance. I meant what San Juan Basin Health Center states. That's a health order. That's what I meant.
There are health orders that exist, yes, issued by the state. So I don't know if Chief, if that answered the question, then maybe you don't need to hear from Chief. But I think that the question of those kind of customer store owner interactions could become tense, and maybe the Chief can give you some input as to whether or not how we want to handle that in the way that is least interactional and least controversial.
Thank you,
Only thing I would add, Dirk, was if there is a confrontation or there's an issue with a customer from a business owner, give us a call right immediately, and we'll get some officers down there and we'll deal with the situation based off of what we currently have on the books and how we are trained to handle these types of situations and de-escalate them.
And this ordinance is not going to stop those types of occurrences from happening. It may actually even escalate them. Those occurrences happen even without.
Potentially, because we already have a lot of these mechanisms already in the books. They're already in existence, and it would be a way for us to be able to deal with it with an additional tool if need be.
Barbara, go right ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I guess I want to kind of share where my thinking is with this ordinance. We are in an emergency. It's going on for a long time, but it is still an emergency. We are in a pandemic, and we don't really fully understand how everything at the end will end up. But right now we know that our health officials are advising us to take certain measures to prevent and slow down the spread. So I actually recognize that San Juan Basin Public Health has asked for our help. And Dirk, if this, in your legal opinion, gives us a different set of teeth, maybe with some more muscle, then I will support this. There are a few things I have questions about, but I think that we are in a critical period, and we need to do everything within our power to address this, while also being cognizant of the people who talked about with deep conviction and experience of their issues with not being able to wear a mask. So I want to recognize that I heard you, but for those of us in the community who can, we should, and if this ordinance helps provide that compliance, then I'd like to see us go forward.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that perspective. And I'm just, so you guys know, I am hearing from Chris, and he is ready to, he's still with us, and I hope. Now it looks like he may have gotten kicked out again, but he would like to potentially communicate, but also he's hoping to be able to vote on this as well as we get closer. And I appreciate your perspective, Barbara. I want to suggest that I appreciated the residents who have spoken up on both sides of this issue. I recognize the controversial nature of this issue. This is an extremely difficult situation that we're in, and none of us want to be in this situation. And as I drove around over the weekend and last night and saw how completely dead our city was, I was just so deeply disturbed by that. And so I recognize that we are in a state where we have to do, I believe, everything that we can do to get back to a state of normalcy as fast as we can for the success of our businesses, for the health of our people. And, you know, with the fact that our hospital is nearing capacity, I think that's the critical juncture where it's our obligation to work as close as we can with our health experts and the city, the county, and San Juan Basin Public Health to collaborate together as closely as can to do what we can to protect the health of the people. And that I wish we were not in this situation, and my goal is to get out of this situation as fast as we possibly can. So I'm ready to take action today as well.
Thank you, Melissa. We had Chris back there for just a moment, but I too am impacted by the testimony that we've received today. I'm also impacted by the calls and emails and pleas from citizens that have suggested we're not doing enough. So we are in a precarious spot. What is that balance is the decision that we need to make on behalf of the citizens. I try not to make it an ideological choice. To me, it's a clear medical choice, which has direct impact on our economy. We talk about the health of our businesses, as you just said, Melissa. It is sad. We're talking, the governor's orders are to further shut down of our restaurants and bars at earlier times and public gatherings. All that is with an intent to get through this in the fastest possible time frame with less impact on our economy, ultimately. And to me, a mask is not shutting down the city of Durango. A mask is getting us through this faster, quicker, and more efficient. And we need to find the fastest path to the other side and buy some time while the vaccine's being created. That's all this is. It's to me, we've asked our city attorney to look at ways we can create a culture where we aren't writing tickets on everybody. We aren't putting anybody in jail. We're just trying to say, we're serious about this as a community. And we do care. Durango cares, as Kim stated. And so first and foremost, we need to do education. We need to create a program around this. But it's all for naught if we don't have some level of enforcement, in my mind. And historically, the health department is not the best enforcer, and nor are we. We have limited resources. We all do. We just hope that we can make it important enough for our community to participate. And with that, I'm supportive of the ordinance as written. And if Chris is with us, perhaps entertain a motion in that regard. Barbara, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make one suggested change to the ordinance, and that's on page 2. And it reads, whereas assuring the health and welfare of citizens and visitors to Durango, I'd like to change that to residents and visitors of Durango. I think it's important. We could have international students here, people from a variety of different citizenships still living within Durango.
Thank you, Barbara. Can we note that, Dirk?
And Chris is there, and he looks like he's unmuted, so maybe he might like to speak.
Chris, are you with us? Chris, if you're with us, We were about to entertain a motion with a modification of proposed by Councilor Noseworthy.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Oh, good. Sorry, I have very low service here. I support this ordinance and have, since I read it, I think this is a critical public health emergency. And I also am sensitive to those folks that can't wear a mask for health reasons. I'm glad that the ordinance addresses it. I feel that we can no longer fail to pay attention to the number of deaths in our country, the number of people that are hospitalized, and the people in critical conditions relative to this. We have to do everything we can to prevent every other health and health versus. I'm happy to make the motion with Barbara's change to approve this ordinance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just would like to say that I don't see how this creates any different pathway than we've already can take. One thing, and as I've mentioned several times, I completely support keeping our community healthy and not overburdening our healthcare systems. And I think that mask wearing is one way to do that. I think social distancing is another. I think proper personal hygiene is another one. I think the additional health orders that the state has recommended and San Juan Basin Health has directed are possibly very functional too. I don't have the data behind that. But I support everything every single one of you said, keeping the businesses open and everything else, but I'm not sure that this ordinance is going to make that difference. I think the community has to do it because they want to do it. And I agree that we have people coming from outside of town who may not know, but that's where that education comes in. We already have a process for education. We already have a process for even handing out masks to people who aren't wearing them and asking them to please wear them. I would like to make our campaign for Durango Cares much more robust to achieve this goal. So I am on the same page as every single one of you about the health of our community. I'm just not certain a law is the best way to do it.
Barbara Noseworthy.
Thank you. I'd just like to recognize the folks who spoke, who had attended and written in, but I'd also like to acknowledge Councilor Baxter raising questions that caused me to actually think and get a clarification, and recognizing that I think we all, as Councilor Baxter said, we all are looking at the well-being of the community, and we approach it differently, but I'd like to recognize what I see as a wonderfully civil way in which we discussed all of this. So I appreciate that. And I too would like to see a robust Durango Cares initiative coupled with this ordinance if it should pass.
Thank you for those comments, and agree that thanks for everybody keeping it civil, including most everybody that called in as well. Absolutely. It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
No.
And Mayor Berkey?
Yes. With that, it's been said, education is the key piece, and hopefully we as a community can get behind this. It's a piece of cloth. I respectfully disagree with some of the comments that have been made regarding the efficacy of masks. I am somewhat learned in some medical aspects of this, and find that I'm not in agreement with some of the comments were made, but I appreciate them nonetheless. And let's just get through it, and hope that this 60 days, if we can get rid of this mask ordinance in less time, we look forward to rescinding it at the soonest possible time frame. I think we all do, and hopefully our business and we get on with the business of recovery for our businesses. I think it's really important as we leave to understand what our city manager had proposed in terms of distribution of the CARES money for our businesses, for the benefit of our businesses. And that will be rolled out here, as Jose presented earlier in the meeting, for our businesses to apply for additional money beyond anything the federal government is giving out. These are federal funds, but there are federal funds that a small portion that we've been given here as the city of Durango that we would like to pass on to those businesses most deserving and most affected. And for all of us, I hope it's as short a time frame as possible that we endure this economic hardship. So with that, if there's no other business, I will adjourn the meeting. But first I'll ask if there is any other business and any other last comments. And if not, thank you so much for all this civil conversation and everybody that participated today. And I will adjourn this meeting of Durango City Council. Thank you.